In this video, I'm going to show you how to use more than two branches coming from a node, and I'm going to show you how to use probability distributions on each of those branches. So what you're looking at here is a very simple model. I haven't even bothered to put any other descriptors in the labels other than what Precision Tree gives us. So you see, this is called new tree, and the first node has 3 branches. And each of these branches has a probability, and the value of that probability is uncertain. If you take a look here, you can see this is a uniform distribution. So this value is between 15 and 25%, and we don't know what value it is. If I click down here, you'll see this is also a uniform distribution, and this node is also a uniform distribution. In fact, all the distributions in this model, all the probabilities in this model are set up as uniform distributions. Now, notice in column D here that we have value errors. And the value errors occur because the probabilities on the nodes here do not sum to 1, and that violates the laws of probability. So what I have done here, I have summed up these 3 values. This is the sum for these 3. This is the sum for these 4, and this is the sum for these 2. So you can see that the probabilities here, when we randomly select a value from this uniform distribution and then randomly select from this one and randomly select from this one, we can get totals above or below 1. Let me point out down here where I have 2 branches. I have a uniform distribution, notice up here in this cell, and I also have a uniform distribution in this second branch. So rather than say equal sign 1 minus this, there might be occasions when you want to have a second distribution here. And since the software randomly selects from each distribution, it's not paying attention to the laws of probability that says the probabilities of all the branches has to sum to 1. So we want to be able to fix that. Now I also want you to notice here this value. This is the sum of all the blue probability values here, these value errors. So we're going to go to Precision Tree, to the tab. I'm going to go to the Edit Cluster and the Settings icon, where I'll choose Model Settings. So let me move this over here so you can see that. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the Calculation tab. Now this software does a great deal more than what we are learning in this class, so it would be worth your while to investigate it if you begin to use this software. You're going to see a lot of things here like the method, cumulative payoff, and the optimum path, maximum payoff. These all refer to the decision tree capabilities, and we're just using the event tree capabilities right now. But here's where I want you to focus, the chance probabilities. This says they must total 100%. That means you have to make sure they total 100%. The other option you have is to ask at risk to automatically normalize your probabilities. That means to scale them so that they do equal 100%. So let me click OK, and you're going to see there were a couple of changes. First, I want you to see that the value errors have gone away, and I also want you to see that the endpoints, all these endpoint probabilities, equal 100%. Okay? That's what's being normalized here. You'll notice that in our node, the 3 branches still look like they are more than 100%. In fact, they are more than 100%. What the software is doing that you can't see is it's taken 24.97 and dividing it by this number. And then it takes this value right here, 34.19, and divides by this number. And then it will take this, 47.6, and divide by this number. And it will have 3 new numbers for branch 1, 2, and 3 that do sum to 100. It's doing the same thing for this node, for this node, and for this node, but you don't see the normalized values on the branches. What you do see is the normalized values here. Okay, so for example, now this is likely to change as I go through clicking, but if I say equal sign this times this, and it did give me a new iteration, but I would like it to see this. If you multiply this number times this number, what you really get is 6.5%. The normalized value here, and this is what's important to us, these values have been normalized, and the product here reflects that normalization. So these probabilities are good. These individual probabilities are not so good. So if they are of interest to you, they are not normalized, and you need to know that. So I have indicated that 3 of these, every branch 1 output, is an output of interest to us. Notice I have risk output here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to at risk. We're going to do a simple simulation 1,000 times. And you can see the variation in this value. So there is a probability distribution, and that reflects the changes in this value here on branch 1 and this value on branch 1. Okay? We can go on down here. You can see, as you would expect, there are distributions for each of these. Now there's one last thing I want to mention, because depending on how your software is set up, you might find that when you get to this point where you want to start a simulation, you don't see a distribution. So I'm going to go back to Precision Tree, to Settings, to Model Settings. And we looked at calculations a minute ago. What I want to do is jump down here to At Risk. Please make note of this somewhere if you need to, that when you're going to do a simulation, you need to make sure that this value is checked and this value is checked. If by chance these other radio buttons have been selected, you might not see the results here. That's just one of those technical trust me kind of things. You don't know who's been using the software before you, or maybe how it comes preset from the factory. So if you run a simulation, as we did here, and you don't see a distribution, then come to Precision Tree, Edit, Settings, Model Settings, At Risk tab, and click the top 2 buttons. Okay? So with that, you now have the power to build event trees that are more complex than simple yes and no branches.